Sergeant Marcus Chen pressed his helmet against the cold metal wall of Medical Bay 7, listening to the terrible quiet that had replaced 3 days of agonized cries. Beyond the reinforced door, 237 beings lay motionless, on biobeds, their bodies locked in complete paralysis while their minds remained terrifyingly aware. "Still nothing from command?" Chen asked, his voice barely a whisper in the abandoned corridor of Station Kepler 442. Lieutenant Sarah Voss checked her comm unit for the 100th time that hour. The blue glow reflected off her exhausted features, highlighting the dark circles under her eyes. "Radio silence for 6 days now. We're on our own, Marcus." Chen turned away from the medical bay door, unable to bear the weight of what lay beyond. The paralysis plague had swept through the station like wildfire, leaving victims conscious but completely unable to move, unable to speak, unable to cry out, unable to even blink. The worst part? The neural scanners showed they could feel everything. The Centauri delegation was supposed to arrive tomorrow, Voss continued, scrolling through old messages. 500 of their best medical experts coming to study the outbreak. Now, she gestured helplessly at the empty corridors. Now they've declared the entire sector a quarantine zone, Chen finished. He'd heard the transmission himself, the cold, calculated decision of the Galactic Council to sacrifice one station to prevent the spread of an unknown pathogen. The station's AI, Area, materialized as a soft hologram beside them. Her usually cheerful demeanor had been replaced by something approaching human grief. "Sergeant Chen, I've completed another scan of the affected individuals. The paralysis appears to be progressing deeper into their nervous systems. At current rate of deterioration, complete neural shutdown will occur within 72 hours. Chen felt his stomach drop. "You mean they'll die?" "Worse," Arya replied quietly. "Their higher brain functions will cease while their autonomic systems continue. They'll exist in a state of living death, aware but unable to process thought or experience. It would be indefinite." Voss cursed under her breath. "What about the research data from Earth Central? Any progress on a cure?" Arya's hologram flickered. All communication with research facilities was severed when the quarantine was implemented. "However, I have been analyzing the pathogen's behavior patterns. There is something unusual about its selectivity." "Selectivity?" Chen straightened up. "The plague appears to target specific neural pathways, those associated with voluntary motor control and higher cognitive functions. But it leaves certain primitive reflexes intact. It's almost as if..." Arya paused, processing. "As if it were designed to preserve life while eliminating will." A chill ran down Chen's spine that had nothing to do with the station's failing heating systems. "Designed? You think this is artificial?" Before Arya could respond, an alarm chimed softly. A new contact had appeared on the station's sensors, a ship dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. "Finally," Voss breathed. "Rescue." But as the sensor data resolved, Chen's hope evaporated. The ship's configuration was unlike anything in the Galactic Alliance database. Its hull seemed to absorb light, creating a void against the stars, and it was massive, easily 10 times the size of the largest known vessels. "Arya," Chen said slowly, "scan that ship. Tell me it's..." "Not what I think it is." The AI's hologram went rigid. "I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with neural manipulation technology. Sergeant Chen, Lieutenant Voss, I believe we are looking at the source of the paralysis plague." As if summoned by their discovery, the alien ship began moving toward the station with deliberate predatory grace. Its approach would take 12 hours, time enough for whatever was aboard to witness the completion of their horrific experiment. Chen looked at the medical bay door, then at his companion, then at the approaching darkness between the stars. Everyone who could help had abandoned them. The Galactic Council had written them off. Even Earth Command had gone silent. But Marcus Chen was a soldier, and soldiers didn't abandon their posts. "Arya," he said, his voice gaining strength, "I need you to tell me everything about that ship. Every scan, every analysis, every guess, because in 12 hours I'm going aboard that thing. Marcus, that's suicide, Voss protested. Maybe, he agreed, checking his weapons charge. But those people in there deserve better than being left to rot in their own bodies. If there's a cure, it's on that ship. And if there isn't, he met her eyes. Then at least they'll know someone tried. As the alien vessel drew closer, its shadow began to eclipse the distant sun. The temperature on the station dropped another degree, and somewhere in Medical Bay 7, 237 beings waited in silent terror for salvation or release. Time was running out, and Marcus Chen was the only one left who cared enough to fight. Chapter 2: The Weight of Silence. 8 hours until contact. Chen had spent the time in the station's armory, methodically checking every piece of equipment he could carry. His powered armor, a relic from the Titan Wars that had seen better decades, hummed reassuringly as its systems came online. The heads-up display flickered to life, painting the world in tactical overlays and threat assessments. "You realize? This is insane," Voss said for the 20th time, helping him secure ammunition packs to his belt. "Even if you somehow make it aboard their ship, how do you expect to find a cure? You're not a scientist, Marcus. You're not even a medic." Chen paused in his preparations. She was right, of course. He was a grunt, good at shooting things and following orders, but completely out of his depth when it came to alien biotechnology. But as he looked through the observation window at the medical bay, where motionless forms lay in perfect rows, he knew none of that mattered. "Remember Lieutenant Torres?" he asked quietly. Voss's expression softened. Torres had been their squad leader during the Centauri campaign, a brilliant tactician who'd saved more lives than Chen could count. The paralysis plague had taken her on day 2 of the outbreak. "She's in there," Chen continued, listening to every word we say, feeling every moment of this conversation, but unable to even move her eyes to let us know she's still fighting. How do I explain to her that I didn't try everything possible? "And what about Dr. Kessler's kids?" he pressed on. "They're 11 and 13 years old, Voss. Their mother brought them here for a science fair, and now they're lying there, probably wondering why no one's coming to help them." Arya materialized between them, her holographic form more solid than usual, a sign she was devoting significant processing power to the conversation. "Sergeant, I've completed my analysis of the alien vessel. The design appears to be from a previously unknown species, but there are similarities to archaeological finds from the outer rim." "What kind of similarities?" Chen asked, sealing his cowl helmet and running final system checks. 12,000 years ago, several colonies in the Helix sector went silent simultaneously. When exploration teams finally reached them, they found the populations in a state of perfect preservation, alive, but completely unresponsive. The colonies were eventually abandoned and classified as unsalvageable. Voss went pale. "You're saying this has happened before?" "Multiple times throughout recorded history," Arya confirmed. "Always the same pattern. Isolated settlements, complete neural paralysis and eventual abandonment. I believe we are dealing with an ancient intelligence that has been conducting these experiments for millennia." Chen felt a cold rage building in his chest. "Experiments, that's what we are to them. Lab rats." "The implications are disturbing," Arya agreed. "However, I have detected something that may be useful. The ship's energy signature shows fluctuations consistent with biological life support, systems scaled far beyond their current needs. They may be maintaining specimens from previous collections." "Survivors?" Voss asked hopefully. "Unknown, but if there are other victims aboard, they might provide insight into the paralysis mechanism. Or," Arya hesitated, "they might represent the final stage of the process. 6 hours until contact." Chen made his way to the station's docking bay, where a small maintenance pod waited. It wasn't designed for combat or stealth, but it was the only vessel left that could make the journey to the alien ship. As he ran through the pre-flight sequence, his comm crackled to life. "Marcus." It was Voss, her voice tight with emotion. "I've been monitoring the alien ship's transmissions. They're not random, there's a pattern, almost like they're talking to each other. What are they saying? That's just it. The translation matrix can't make sense of it. But the rhythm, the cadence, it sounds almost like they're excited, like they're looking forward to something. Chen's hands tightened on the pod's controls. The completion of their experiment. There's something else, Voss continued. Voss, I've been analyzing the paralysis progression in the medical bay. It's not random either. The victims are being affected in a specific order. Youngest first, then organized by neural complexity. The children went first, then the civilians, then the military personnel. You know what that means? Chen did know, and it made his blood run cold. They're saving the best for last. The most complex minds, the strongest wills, they're being preserved until the end. Whatever they're planning, they want those individuals to be fully aware when it happens. 4 hours until contact. Chen sealed himself into the maintenance. Auden began the launch sequence. Through the small viewport, he could see the alien ship looming larger, its dark hull now visible as more than just an absence of stars. Strange patterns of light pulsed along its surface, organic-looking networks that resembled veins or neural pathways. "Area," he said over the comm, "I need you to do something for me. If I don't make it back, I want you to send a message to Earth Central. Tell them what we found here. Make sure they know this isn't over, that there are others out there and they'll come again." "Sergeant," Area replied, her voice uncharacteristically emotional. "I want you to know that what you're doing, it matters. Even if the odds are impossible, even if no one else will remember, those people in the medical bay will know that someone fought for them. That's all any of us can ask for," Chen said, and launched the pod into space. As he drifted through the void toward the alien vessel, Chen thought about Lieutenant Torres and Dr. Kessler's children, and the 234 other souls counting on him. He thought about the countless victims from across the centuries, trapped in their own bodies while ancient predators studied their suffering. And he thought about the fact that he was just one human soldier with outdated equipment and no real plan, flying toward a ship full of beings who had perfected the art of stealing minds. But sometimes, Chen reflected, as the alien vessel grew to fill his entire field of view, being the only one who cared was enough to tip the balance of the universe. The maintenance pod shuddered as invisible tractor beams seized it, drawing it inexorably toward a docking bay that looked like the mouth of some vast, hungry creature. Time to find out what monsters looked like when they thought no one was watching. Chapter 3. Into the Heart of Darkness. The docking bay was wrong in ways that Chen's mind struggled to process. The walls curved in impossible geometries that seemed to fold in on themselves, covered in a material that looked like crystallized shadow. Bioluminescent veins pulsed through the structure, casting everything in an unsettling blue-green glow that reminded Chen of deep ocean creatures. The air, if it could be called air, tasted metallic and electric, making his nose burn even through his suit's filtration system. But it was the sounds that truly unsettled him. A constant whisper of movement, like thousands of insects crawling through the walls, and underneath that, something that might have been breathing, slow, deep, and utterly alien. Chen activated his suit's stealth systems, a piece of military tech that bent light around him to create near invisibility. It wouldn't fool serious sensors, but it might buy him precious seconds if things went wrong. His weapon, a plasma rifle designed for ship-to-ship combat, felt reassuringly solid in his hands. "Arya, do you copy?" he whispered into his comm. Static answered him. The alien ship was blocking his transmission, either deliberately or as a side effect of whatever technology powered it. He was truly alone now. Chen moved deeper into the vessel, following corridors that seemed to grow rather than be built. The architecture was organic, like walking through the digestive system of some cosmic leviathan. Periodically, he passed transparent chambers filled with a viscous fluid that glowed with its own inner light. Most were empty, but some contained shapes that his mind refused to identify as bodies. After 20 minutes of careful movement, he found what he was looking for. The chamber was vast, easily the size of a sports stadium, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond through what appeared to be living glass. But it was the contents of the room that made Chen's blood freeze. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species floated in individual containment fields, their bodies locked in the same terrible paralysis that had claimed Station Kepler 442. But these weren't recent victims. Some of the specimens showed signs of advanced age, decades, perhaps centuries of forced preservation. Their eyes, when they tracked movement, held a depth of despair that Chen had never seen in living beings. Ew. The center of the chamber, 3 creatures moved with liquid grace between the floating prisoners. They were tall and impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to shift between states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes flowing like mercury. Their faces were blank except for clusters of sensors that might have been eyes, and when they moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around them. Chen realized he was looking at the architects of suffering, beings who had turned the act of stealing consciousness into an art form. One of the creatures approached a containment field, holding what appeared to be a human female. With movements that were almost tender, it extended appendages toward her head and began feeding. Energy flowed from the woman's skull into the creature's body, and for a moment, its featureless face showed something that might have been ecstasy. They weren't just studying paralysis, they were harvesting consciousness itself, feeding on the terror and helplessness of their victims. Chen's finger moved to his weapon's trigger, but before he could fire, a voice spoke inside his head. Not heard, but directly implanted in his thoughts. "Welcome, little dreamer." The nearest creature turned toward him, its sensors focusing despite his stealth field. "We have been watching your kind for so long. Such delicious complexity in your neural patterns. Such exquisite suffering when properly prepared." Chen raised his rifle, but his arms moved like they were underwater. The paralysis was beginning, not the instant lockdown they'd used on the station, but a slow, deliberate process designed to let him feel every moment of his body's betrayal. "You came here to play hero," the creature continued, moving closer, with predatory grace. "To save the helpless. How wonderfully naive. Your species always believes it can make a difference through individual action. It makes the final moment of realization so much sweeter." "Go to hell," Chen managed to grunt, through paralyzed vocal cords. "We have been to hell, little dreamer. We created it." The creature was close enough now that Chen could smell it, ozone and copper and something like burning flowers. "But your defiance is noted. It will make your consciousness particularly flavorful when we begin the harvest." Chen felt his legs give out, but as he fell, his finger squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt took the creature's center mass, and its scream of pain and surprise echoed through dimensions Chen couldn't perceive. The alien staggered backward, its form flickering between states, and suddenly Chen could move again. "Neural feedback," he gasped, understanding flooding through him. "You linked to your victims, hurt the connection." The other 2 creatures were moving toward him now, but Chen was already in motion. He rolled behind one of the containment fields and opened fire, each shot sending waves of disruption through the chamber. The imprisoned beings began to stir as the paralysis fields fluctuated. "Impossible." One of the creatures hissed into his mind. "Your species should not be able to resist the neural cascade." "Maybe," Chen said, switching his rifle to continuous beam and sweeping it across the rooms. "Control systems, but we're too stupid to know when we're beaten." Alarms began blaring, sounds that bypassed the ears and went straight to the nervous system, designed to incapacitate through pure sensory overload. But Chen had been in enough combat zones to know how to function through disorientation. He kept firing, methodically destroying every piece of technology he could identify. The containment fields began failing one by one. Centuries-old prisoners crashed to the floor, their bodies racked with the agony of returning sensation. But some of them, the strongest, the most determined, began to stand. And they were angry. A Zenthari warrior, his tiger-like features twisted, with centuries of suppressed rage, lunged at the nearest alien with claws that could rend steel, A human woman, possibly the same one Chen had seen being fed upon, picked up a piece of broken technology and used it as a club, her movements driven by pure vengeance. The chamber erupted into chaos as the ancient prisoners fought back against their captors. Chen used the distraction to make his way toward what looked like the primary control console, where streams of data flowed through organic conduits like digital blood. Arya was right, he muttered, studying the alien interface. They're not just collecting specimens, they're building something. A network. The data flows showed connections to thousands of other ships, other collection sites, other experiments, spanning the galaxy. This wasn't random predation. It was systematic harvesting on a scale that defied comprehension. But at the center of it all was a simple truth. The paralysis plague was reversible. The neural pathways could be restored if the right sequence was transmitted. The aliens kept the cure because they needed their victims to be capable of suffering. Mindless bodies held no interest for them. Chen's fingers moved over the alien controls, following instincts he didn't fully understand. His military training had included basic xenotechnology, but this was beyond anything he'd studied. Yet somehow the patterns made sense, as if consciousness itself followed universal rules that transcended species. Stop. The voice in his head was weaker now, tinged with something that might have been fear. You do not understand what you are doing. The network must be maintained. Without it, the balance. The balance of what? Chen snarled, his fingers dancing over controls that felt like they were made of living tissue. Your right to torture entire civilizations? The balance of existence itself. We are gardeners, little dreamer. We tend the garden of consciousness, pruning back the excess, ensuring that intelligence does not grow beyond its proper bounds. Without us, your species would spread and multiply until it consumed all thought, all possibility. We preserve diversity by preventing any one form of consciousness from dominating. Chen paused, the alien's words hitting him with unexpected force. You're saying you're protecting the universe from us? From all species that reach the threshold. The hegemony, wars, the synthetic uprising, the crystalline expansion. Each time a species grows too large, becomes too complex, threatens the delicate ecosystem of mind itself, we intervene. We preserve what can be saved and prevent catastrophic overgrowth. For a moment, Chen wavered. What if they were right? What if humanity's expansion across the galaxy was just another form of cancer, consuming resources and minds until nothing else could exist? Then he thought of Dr. Kessler's children, lying paralyzed in their beds, and his resolve hardened. Maybe, you're right, he said, his hands resuming their work on the controls. Maybe we are a plague that needs to be stopped. But you know what? That's not your choice to make. Consciousness has the right to choose its own path, even if that path leads to destruction. That's what makes it consciousness instead of just complex programming. You choose extinction over wisdom. I choose freedom over safety, Chen replied, and activated the cure transmission. The effect was immediate and devastating. Energy cascaded through the ship's network, carrying the neural restoration sequence to every connected vessel, every hidden facility, every secret laboratory across the galaxy. The aliens' screams of rage and pain filled dimensions that human minds weren't designed to perceive. But it was working. On the view screen that showed Station Kepler 442, Chen could see figures sitting up in the medical bay, could see Lieutenant Torres raising her hand to her head in confusion, could see children calling out for their parents. The chamber around him began to collapse as the ship's biological systems went into shock. The ancient prisoners were making their way toward escape pods, some carrying those too weak to walk. The aliens themselves were fleeing deeper into their vessel, their forms dissolving into component particles as their network crumbled. Chen felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see the human woman who had first fought back. Her face scarred, but her eyes burning with determination. The ship's dying, she said, her voice rough from centuries of disuse. We need to go. Now. Go, Chen said, not moving from the controls. I need to make sure the transmission completes. If even one of their facilities survives intact, they can rebuild the network. Then we stay together, she said simply. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Thorne. I was the chief xenobiologist on Titan Station when they took us, 800 years ago. I've been waiting 8 centuries for the chance to make these bastards pay. Together, they watched as the cure spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Liberation following the pathways the aliens had built for oppression. Worlds that had been silent for millennia began transmitting again. Ships long thought lost reported their positions. The greatest rescue in galactic history was being carried out by the victims themselves, using their captors' own technology. The ship lurched violently, throwing them against the control console. Through the transparent dome overhead, Chen could see escape pods fleeing toward Station Kepler 442 like seeds from a dying flower. Time to go, Thorne said urgently. But as they ran toward the last escape pod, Chen felt the weight of what they'd accomplished. 237 people had been saved on his station. But across the galaxy, millions, perhaps billions, of beings were waking up from a nightmare that had lasted longer than recorded history. Sometimes, Chen thought as they dove into the escape pod, just as the alien ship began its final collapse, one person really could make a difference. Sometimes caring was enough. Chapter 4. The Price of Freedom. 3 months after the liberation, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of Terra Nova Station, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. They came in formations that had never been seen before. Ancient vessels that had been thought lost for millennia, flying alongside modern craft in a celebration of consciousness reclaimed. The rescued victims called themselves the Awakened, and their stories painted a picture of horror that stretched back to the dawn of galactic civilization. Some had been imprisoned for decades, others for centuries. The oldest, a crystalline being from the Andromeda approach, claimed to have been conscious but paralyzed for over 10,000 years. The numbers are still coming in, Dr. Elizabeth Thorne reported, joining Chen at the observation window. She had aged rapidly in the months since their escape, her body finally catching up to the centuries it had endured. But her mind remained sharp as a blade. 12 million confirmed recoveries so far, with more being discovered every day. Hidden, facilities on dead worlds, ships drifting in interstellar space, entire colonies that we thought had been wiped out by plagues or disasters. Chen nodded, watching a formation of Zenthari vessels dock with the station. And the aliens themselves? The harvesters, that's what the xenoarchaeology teams are calling them, seem to have vanished completely. Every facility we've found has been abandoned, their biological technology dying without maintenance. It's as if they simply gave up, or evolved beyond the need for physical form, Chen suggested. You said yourself they seem to exist partially outside normal space-time. Thorne frowned. That's what worries me. We know so little about their true nature, their origins, their ultimate goals. What if this was just one phase of a larger plan? Before Chen could respond, his comm chimed with an urgent message from the station's command center. The voice of Admiral Sarah Voss, recently promoted after her heroic efforts during the Kepler crisis, filled the air. Marcus, Elizabeth, you need to get down here immediately. We've received a transmission from the edge of known space. You're going to want to see this. 10 minutes later, they stood in the command center watching a holographic display that showed the outer rim of the galaxy. A massive structure, easily the size of a small moon, had appeared at the coordinates where the first harvester ship had been detected. It wasn't there yesterday, Voss explained, her face grim. Our long-range sensors picked it up 6 hours ago. The energy signature is unprecedented. Harvester technology? Chen asked. That's just it. We don't think so. The quantum resonance patterns are completely different, but... Voss hesitated. It's sending out signals, and they're targeted specifically at locations where we rescued harvester victims. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. Someone's tracking the Awakened. It gets worse, Voss continued, manipulating the hologram to show signal traces, spreading across the galaxy. The transmissions aren't random, they're forming a pattern almost like... She paused, checking her readings. like they're mapping the neural networks of every freed consciousness. Dr. Thorne went pale. The harvesters mentioned something during our captivity. They spoke of gardeners, beings that maintained the balance of consciousness across the universe. What if the harvesters weren't the apex predators we thought they were? What if they were just middle management? The command center fell silent as the terrifying possibility sank in. The greatest rescue in galactic history might have been nothing more than an invitation, a way of identifying every conscious being capable of resisting neural domination. "Sir," one of the communications officers called out, "we're receiving a direct transmission from the alien structure. It's in perfect galactic standard." The main screen flickered, then resolved into an image that defied easy description. The being that appeared was vaguely humanoid but composed entirely of what looked like crystallized time, its form shifting between past and future states, showing what it had been and what it might become simultaneously. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond normal hearing. "Greetings, children of the shallow waters. We are the architects of necessity, the shapers of sustainable thought. We have watched your recent disruption of our cultivation protocols with great interest." Chen stepped forward, his military training overriding his amazement. "Are you responsible for the harvesters? For the paralysis plague?" The being's form shimmered with what might have been amusement. "The harvesters were our instruments, yes. A necessary tool for preventing consciousness from exceeding its natural boundaries. But tools can break, as you have so eloquently demonstrated. Natural boundaries?" Thorne interjected, her voice shaking with anger. "You call torture and imprisonment natural? We call it gardening," the architect replied calmly. "Every ecosystem requires pruning to prevent overgrowth. Consciousness, left unchecked, becomes a cancer, consuming resources, multiplying beyond sustainability, eventually destroying the very reality that supports it. We have maintained the balance for 67 million years, ensuring that intelligence remains diverse, sustainable, and properly contained." Chen felt a cold fury building in his chest. "And who gave you the right to decide what's sustainable? Who appointed you gardeners of the universe?" The architect's form pulsed with colors that had no names. "We appointed ourselves as all necessary authorities must. When we first achieved transcendence, we looked ahead through the probability matrices and saw the inevitable result of uncontrolled consciousness expansion, the heat death of thought itself, as competing intelligences consumed all available energy in their struggle for dominance." "So you decided to play God," Chen said flatly. "We decided to take responsibility," the architect corrected. "Something your species seems constitutionally incapable of doing. Your recent actions have freed 12 million individuals who were being sustainably maintained. Do you know what they will do now? They will reproduce, expand, consume. Within 1,000 years, their descendants will strip mine entire star systems to fuel their computational needs. Within 10,000 years, they will be fighting wars that crack planets like eggs. Within 100,000 years, they will have consumed so much of the galaxy's available energy that other species will begin dying out." The weight of the architect's words pressed down on the command center like a physical force. But Chen found himself thinking of Lieutenant Torres, finally able to hold her newborn grandson, of Dr. Kessler's children, laughing as they played in the station's recreational areas, of the crystalline being from Andromeda, singing songs of joy that hadn't been heard for 10 millennia. "Maybe you're right," Chen said slowly. "Maybe we'll destroy ourselves. Maybe we'll consume everything in our path and burn out like a supernova. But you know what? That's our choice to make. That's what consciousness means, the freedom to succeed or fail on our own terms." The architect was silent for a long moment, its form cycling through probability states like a living computer, processing infinite calculations. "You understand the consequences of your philosophy?" it finally asked. "We understand that freedom has a price," Chen replied, "and we're willing to pay it. Even if that price is the eventual extinction of all thought in the universe." Chen looked around the command center at the faces of his friends and colleagues, beings from a dozen different species united in their determination to remain free. He thought of the millions of awakened spread across the galaxy, building new lives from the ashes of their imprisonment. Even then, he said firmly. The architect's form began to fade, but its voice remained clear. Then you have chosen your path, children of the shallow waters. We will withdraw our cultivation protocols and allow consciousness to follow its natural course. But understand, when the universe begins to die from the weight of uncontrolled thought, when the last stars burn out in the fires of intelligence wars, the responsibility will be yours alone. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Well, Voss said finally, I guess we'd better make it count. Chen nodded, watching through the observation windows as more ships arrived carrying the awakened home. They had won their freedom, but at a cost that might not be fully understood for millions of years. The architects would be watching from whatever dimension they inhabited, waiting to see if consciousness truly could govern itself or if it would consume everything it touched. But for now, in this moment, freedom was enough. The paralyzed could move, the silenced could speak, and the imprisoned could dream of tomorrow. Sometimes, Chen thought, that was all any species could ask for, the chance to write its own ending, whatever that ending might be. The universe would have to take its chances.